This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. Just getting back from the gym, and I am joined by none other than UFO Tarheel, Casey, who does the UFO Prophets podcast on this channel and is helping me stay up to date with the UAP news and do some interviews because he really knows what he's talking about from the technical side of things, and he's up to date on the latest research. And today we're gonna do a little review of the latest Dr. Stephen Greer interview, which I have to admit, I like this interview better than any other of Dr. Stephen Greer's interviews I've seen so far in any of his documentaries because it's more impartial, because it's with Jesse Michaels,
Mm-hmm.
and he plays a good devil's advocate here. And what did you have to say about it to just start off overall? What did you think of it, thinking about all of Stephen Greer's interviews lately since January?
Yeah, and I mean, he picked up his podcasting recently, right? I mean, like picked up the somewhere around like the Jake Barber incident, like right before it. I'm wanting to say like November, December. He because he knew Jake Barber, right? And for those that don't know Jake Barber, he is the one that
He
came out
does
with it
also name drop Jake Barber a lot in
a
this.
lot. Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I guess I understand that because Jake's big news lately. Um, but he started podcasting more on his channel on YouTube. Dr. Greer did, leading up to January's announcement of the egg retrieval UFO story with Ross Coulthart. So we kind of knew something was up, but for those, if we could just take a second, it catch people up on like Dr. Greer and why this was kind of a big moment for us in ufology. Um, and I'll try to do this quick, but you know, Dr. Greer, those that don't know, really quick, he was an ER doctor. I'm pretty sure it was here in Charlotte, North Carolina. When I say here, I live near Charlotte. So,
Yeah, and he does name drop Charlotte quite a bit, and
yeah,
there's definitely a lot of fans on here from Charlotte. Ric Flair's famous hometown for us wrestling fans.
yeah. First famous person I ever met and grabbed him by the bicep was Ric Flair. So down here at a music festival, that was back when he had a pretty big one. But yeah, he's. I think he lives in Virginia now. Dr. Greer, getting back to him, I think he lives in Virginia now, but he was Charlotte native and left the field, started getting into this. Um, I'm pretty sure this is where I have some disconnect. He's claiming it's from the intelligence community picking up on his CE5 activities. That's kind of what he tells Jesse, that the intelligence community was picking up on the fact that he was doing CE5 and they started looking into him. And that's how these two worlds collided, with him getting out of being an ER doctor and getting into chasing down black programs in the government and bringing out whistleblowers. But we can get into that later. But when you look at, he started off in the early 90s doing that. He claims that he ran into, or he did a debrief with Woolsey, who was, I believe he was the head of the CIA back in the early 90s. I've also heard that was just him buying a dinner ticket. Dr. Greer bought a dinner ticket at some banquet type deal, whatever they call them, the fundraiser type dinners, and he bought into it and he just bum rushed the guy at a dinner and started talking to him about UFOs. But I've also heard Dr. Greer kind of say he debriefed him or briefed him on something. So I'm kind of back and forth on that too. But anyways, leading up through the 90s, he kind of owned this space really because you had Knapp do the Bob Lazar story in the late 80s, and then Knapp kind of started doing some more behind the scenes stuff. I mean, he always did his KLAS reporting in Las Vegas, but Knapp was doing more documentaries and stuff like that. The podcast scene didn't exist back then, right? So I know Knapp does a lot now with Corbell on their Weaponized channel, but there wasn't a lot going on in that space unless you were producing documentaries. So, Greer I think he felt like he was the head of the community, right? The head of the UFO community. He put himself out there at that 2001 press club event. And that was huge. And that's what got a lot of us into ufology, because we saw all these military people lined up on this panel at this National Press Club event, just spilling the beans about everything and all things alien and UFO. And then from there on, Greer is like pumping out documentaries. So a lot of people saw them pop up on Netflix, like I did, and it sparked a lot of interest in people. So you have to give him credit for that. So I think he kind of set himself as like, when people think UFOs, exposing the truth, bringing and shedding light on this subject, that he owned it. And that sets the scene for why this was a big thing yesterday, because someone hit the scene that was bigger than him, and it was Tom DeLonge. And Tom DeLonge was bigger than him, and he is the Blink 182, part of the Blink 182 band. And when Tom DeLonge came along, we all knew that he had like a UFO interest. Just like this week at the Masters, a question got asked of one of the golfers, Victor Hovland. And Victor talked about it's just one of his passions. He likes covering the UFO subject. It's kind of like where Tom DeLonge was. He was a big name and he liked covering the subject, and that was about it. But then he came out with 2 of the Stars Academy. And guess who came in tote with that? Lou Elizondo. And guess what came in right after they launched? The Tic Tac video. And we all remember they posted TTSA at the top of those videos when those went CNN, Fox News, everywhere, because they wanted credit for it, right? They wanted credit for bringing that out. And that set this scene for this clash. So, you had Dr. Greer, who was pretty much kicked out of the Cool Kids Club, right? They didn't include him. He wasn't, when they did their coming out party, they did this big on stage introduction. Tom DeLonge came out, introduced everybody on stage. It was Lou Elizondo, it was Hal Puthoff, Chris Mellon, I believe, was out there. I think even Jim Semivan was out there. He introduced everybody, and there's no Dr. Greer. So I'm just thinking, like, he probably felt left out. He's probably like, wait a second. I've been like the man holding this place down for like the last 15, 20 years. And then you guys come along and you're going to steal all my glory. And so I think that's what set everything on edge. And that's what led up to this being such a scorched the earth interview that we've kind of all been waiting on. We all want to see him and Lou Elizondo in a room together. I don't know if it's going to happen, but this is about as close as we could get, is because Jesse had Lou Elizondo on his show just a few months ago. And
you know what? I'll just say one thing about this Lou Elizondo thing with Jesse. Towards the end of it, Lou kind of hinted of this imminent UFO event. And then in later months after that, he's kind of pretended like he didn't say that or brought it down. But I just want to say, I used to put Lou here and Greer down here. Now, after this interview, and just because Lou's talked a lot, and I don't know if he's really produced as much as I'd like to see. I don't know. I think this interview brought them a little bit closer to me. I know Greer's really out there on some stuff.
Yeah.
But at least he made some good points in this.
He did. And like you said at the beginning, this is his best showing. And maybe that was the balance between him and Jesse. Jesse's very intelligent. Jesse has a very large a very large following, and a very it seems like he has a very large pocketbook or wallet, or however you want to put it, because his productions
He's doing one of these a week. He's literally putting out one of these a week, and I have all the respect in the world for him. But like, whoever's funding him, whether it's him or someone else, they're throwing a lot of money into this.
Yeah, and because his stuff is like top tier production quality every time. And yeah, somebody who's putting out content, you're like, man, that takes a crew. And I mean, and he's out on X and other social media platforms hiring for positions all the time. I think he's somewhere in Texas and he's like, I need this kind of developer or this kind of developer. So he's got a staff too, and he's paying people. So,
Yeah, because these are like basically mini movies. I know this is an
right.
interview, but like there's somebody in there like doing all the putting the graphics in for everything they're talking about. They mentioned Nikola Tesla. We have
Yeah.
the graphic pop up with a little bit of a description. Like it's pretty amazing for like a layman that's just watching it for the first time.
Yeah. And, and so leading up to this though, that's what kind of set everything on edge. And if you want to know, like again, the coming out party for To the Stars Academy, TTSA, was a Tic Tac video. That was their here we are. We are putting out the best story ever. Even Pavel, who we've had on the channel twice now in the last 2 or 3 weeks, Pavel said that was one of the big things that got him into ufology was David Fravor's story. Um, and you heard him set that on fire again. We've been talking about this for a couple weeks. And he doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on it in this interview that was released yesterday, saying that Tic Tac is Lockheed Skunk Works, and Fravor knows it, and Fravor has acknowledged it. I've asked Pavel, I've asked other people who are prominent in this community. Um, does anyone have that acknowledgement video from Fravor saying that, yeah, I know now that was a Lockheed Skunk Works object. It wasn't alien.
Yeah, I that was one thing that I questioned as well. Have you
Yeah,
seen that?
I have not seen, and I've been asking around in the community. Um, and you hear even Jesse was like, "Are you sure?" Has he acknowledged that? And he's like, "Oh yeah." But my point is, he set that whole story on fire because he first said Lou Elizondo is disinformation. He still works for the government. That was his job when he was in government, was to run counterintelligence, and this guy is still disinformation. That's what Greer said about him. And then, um, and then he said the Tic Tac was man-made, and he went even further in that interview last night on this man-made and stuff like that, which I've heard him talk about that. But he pretty much said that all abductions and all that stuff is all orchestrated by these black projects.
Yeah, and I've heard him say that too. And that was one of the things that initially made me not interested in Greer because he was saying, I don't know if he said it in this one, but he also said all mutilations in the
Mutilations too.
past are all man made, not one is alien. But one thing he did say in this interview with Jesse that I haven't heard him acknowledge before was yes, there could be negative ET forms, but he claimed that there was no way of these negative ones to get within our realm somehow, which I don't think he really explained very well. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and he said they even protect him. So Jesse asked him straight up. He's like, you've had attempts made against your life. Now you have to understand when try not to laugh. When Greer says, I can't help it because when he tells this story about the bike seat and it almost killed him, I'm just like, I have some dumbass mistakes I make where I'm sure if somebody was watching it, they'd be like, yeah, dude, you just messed yourself up there. Like you fell down or you tripped or, that's your fault. He's pretty much saying his bike seat malfunctioned and that was somebody trying to kill him. So I can't help but laugh when I tell that story because that's a stretch, to say that an attempt on your life was your bicycle seat malfunctioning and almost killing you. So, but when Jesse asked me about that, you're coming out, you're saying all this stuff that's very direct. Then how are you dealing with attempts on your life or people that want to take your life? And he pretty much said the extraterrestrials are protecting him, and they have a crew for it. They have a protective crew that they deploy to help protect him. So, I mean, he doubles down on some of the talk where you really have to get out there with him. But I mean, he not only set on fire again, like I said, tripling, quadrupling down on the Tic Tac being Lockheed, um, Elizondo. Um, he went into so many other people, and Jesse prefaces it with at the beginning of the podcast, right? He says, "Look, everybody gets everybody gets thrown under the bus in this video, pretty much." So, but some of the
I
ones that
like sometimes, like, and you can tell it's professionally edited too, because when it's something where he needs to protect himself on, like, I think at one point Greer is saying something about Hal put off, and then there's just something of Jessica going, as if
yeah,
it's like, I don't fully agree with you, but I'm not going out and saying it. But the one interesting thing that Greer also said, and this seems like maybe it could possibly be true, was he was claiming that these Lockheed Martin and these Grumman type places have their own teams
yeah,
of quote unquote thugs
yeah,
to take care of
wet work.
any leaks of information. And I do believe something like that could be possible.
But how does he get away with that? How do you? I had a small little disagreement in my neighborhood, and people were saying stuff about other people, like an HOA incident. And one of these ladies was a realtor. And when someone said something bad about her, she was going to go file a lawsuit against them for defamation because it might hurt her business, right? I don't understand how he gets away with some of the things he says on here. Like, I mean, saying Raytheon has like a hit team, and
That is a
nobody,
good point. That is an excellent point.
how does he get a like? I'm just like, I would never dream like a company that size. I don't know what the net worth is or what their
And honestly, how does he keep saying that Elizondo is a disinformation agent if that is really affecting how people look at Lou Elizondo and he's a
yeah.
public figure? That could actually be a defamation case unless there was some truth to it. As you mentioned, that is this the only way that he's getting around saying all this, or are
See
we
that
going to see he's getting sued?
that's that is the that's what everybody's looking for. If okay, I'm with you. I'm kind of all right. Greer, if he's bullshit, okay. But why isn't anyone who Lou makes money off of his name? Lou puts his name on a book and people will buy it, right? Lou puts his name on a podcast and people will watch it, and he could sell advertisements or like pick up sponsorships or whatever. Lou has a name; it's a profitable name. He knows this. He puts out he's in age of disclosure and people watch it. Hey, Lou's in that. If you put on here next week, you're going to have Lou on this channel. You'd probably have more views than you've ever had. Lou is a name. So, and Lou's attorney is on X, threatening people who set up feeds and threads that are anti Lou Elizondo, and he threatens them with defamation. I've seen the back and forth. So I don't know. I have no clue how Greer stays clear of this stuff because he has said so much about Lockheed, Skunkworks, and Raytheon, and tons of stuff about Raytheon. The one about whoever set up the thing in the South Pole with Eric Hecker. I don't know if you've heard about that drama, but Eric Hecker was one of the guys that he brought out at his second press club event here recently. And Eric Hecker worked down at the South Pole and worked on some I don't even know the science behind the system. It's something that did something amazing down there. It gets into neutrinos and all this other stuff. You'd have to go watch Eric Hecker talk about it on like Sean Ryan or something. But he claims that the whatever weapon they were working on down there at the South Pole, I say South Pole, Antarctica, caused an earthquake or a tsunami, something like that. So, uh, it's not just him. It's even some.
Yes, I do remember seeing that on Sean Ryan,
Okay.
which is a great show, by the way, for anyone that doesn't know. But yeah, that there is weather weapons that have been
Mhm.
developed. That
Yeah.
is a fact. Yeah.
So It's not just him. It's not just Greer saying stuff where you're like, man, couldn't that get you in trouble? But I'm just amazed that if you look at the names, I tried to write some of them down because I couldn't keep up with it. But I'm like, okay, he pretty much said how put off was essentially a maybe not a hit guy, but he'll come after you and like ruin your life. Jim Semivan will mess with people. Eric Davis was
I don't even
bald.
see how Hal would have the time for that at this point in his life.
I mean, well, I don't know if he meant like today. I think one of the stories he was talking about was like Hal from the late '90s or something. So he'd have been a little bit more sprite back then, right? But Eric Davis was another one. Hey, I've never heard Eric Davis thrown under the bus until this one. Jacques Vallée. Um, and when Jesse presses him on this stuff, Jesse said, and it's funny, Jesse has this response sometimes if you hear him, and he'll go, like he responds like a little kid sometimes because like Greer will say something bad, and Jesse goes, it's just funny because I think like he's trying because he likes these people. You can tell Jesse likes. He's done
Yeah,
podcasts.
he stuck up for a few of them. Like I believe
Yeah,
he stuck up for Hal and Jacques,
he did.
and he did for the Davis when they're
Eric
talking
Davis.
about the yeah he did kind of stick up for Davis, and he was like, oh, I know all about the Wilson Davis memo, which Greer again was saying some controversial stuff. I'll just throw in this fan comment here,
Yeah.
which is a good point. So according to Greer, all these ETs are super benevolent, super technologically advanced, and want us to evolve, but none of them want to show us a convincing photo or video of themselves, which you would think if they could do that, we would be a lot more open to it. What is the explanation he gives for this?
So he claims we are coming of age. Where we are, we're not ready right now, but he claims we're getting ready. So, like his idea, Greer's idea of a second coming or a an apocalyptic event that moves us into a new age. Even I hate using this because Trump uses it, but he called it like a golden age. It gets kicked around right now, that term golden age, but he tries to say something about that. Like he thinks that there's going, and it's almost kind of in line with maybe this thing that is kind of Chris Bledsoe ish, where there's this awakening or something, and then we move into a new age of humanity, and that's apparently his reason why. Like there's a few that they will connect with, because those people have spiritually put themselves out there, like Greer apparently did when he was meditating here in Boone, North Carolina, not too far from me, home of App State, the App State Mountaineers. And he goes up there and he's meditating, and I think Greer said he's born in 55. This was been 1973 when he was like 18 years old, and he sees an alien ship, and he realizes he can summon them and they'll come see him and stuff like that. And that's what starts his connection with these beings. And that's, he feels like there's certain people that are these receptors to the beings, and but they're not going to reveal them full selves to us until humanity's ready, type thing. And you hear this a lot. You hear this not just from Greer, all these people that talk about galactic federations and things like that, um, and that there's an agreement. There's a story going on out there right now that Pavel. Any of those that aren't watching Pavel's channel, watch it. He'll talk about it. Psychoactivo, um, and he talks about Israel coming out and acknowledging it recently. About there's some defense ministers there that talk about there being some type of agreement with some alien civilization. I think they keep calling it like some kind of federation or galactic federation. So apparently there are people, if you believe in this and you believe that talk, there is communication, but they're not open with all of humanity yet. And that's kind of the whole the hold up. But yeah,
Which
he
is hard to believe, and that goes back to when they show themselves in masses. Why is it sometimes to these groups of school children and not like a group of reporters where they can actually film them giving their message.
Yeah, yeah, the South African event. I believe that's where that one took place.
Yeah, and there's been a bunch of them actually, Bell. Just I don't know if you know what this fellow is talking about. Bobby Jr. is overdue to bring Dane Winnington into the circle unless something bad happens. Do you know any of these characters?
Mm-mm. No.
Sorry, man, but Mort Goldberg talent does not like Dr. Stephen Greer. Neither
Yeah.
does this fellow.
Yeah. And yeah, he does. He thinks, and that's the thing. He did. Whoever just said that, that main character. That's where he was for a long time. He was the guy like Greer, and you even hear people acknowledge him. I've heard people ask James Fox. You've had James Fox on, right? Hannibal. James Fox credits Dr. Greer, and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm not going to talk bad about him because he paved the way for a lot of us to like get into this and like for it to be more mainstream." Dr. Greer's on talking with Dana Carvey and forgetting the other dude's name. The guys from Saturday Night Live,
Yeah,
David Spade.
yeah.
He's on talking to them, doing their podcast. He's
And
on with,
they're taking him on, they're like taking it like it's gospel in that one.
oh yeah, he's on with the Kardashians. He's been on with
He's been on Sean Ryan too twice, and
Sean
it'd be
Ryan.
interesting now that Sean Ryan's had Elizondo,
Mm-hmm.
what it would be to have Greer back, because I believe in one of the Greer ones he mentions that he's tried to get Elizondo and he
Well, he said
couldn't.
he's not welcome back, so they get into that. So apparently,
Oh, really?
yeah, he claims that Rogan took his podcast, their recording down as a way that some agreement so he could get on Spotify. That there was something where he had to take Greer down as one of his past episodes, and then he kind of backtracks a little bit and says, "Oh, you'll have to ask him." You see, he sometimes talks in absolutes and then pulls it back a little bit, but and then I think he said something about Sean Ryan got in trouble or got his hand slapped or somebody got mad at him for talking to Greer, and he said something along the lines of "I'm not allowed back on that channel" or "I won't be back on that channel" or something. But I mean, he doesn't trash Sean Ryan. He doesn't say anything bad about him. He just pretty much says it
Oh,
sounds like
Greer said that, not Elizondo.
right.
Because
Greer.
I know at the end of the Elizondo one, Lou says, "Oh, Sean, you're welcome at my house anytime."
Oh yeah, no, this is all Greer I'm talking about, and yeah,
Okay.
and to be
Because
honest
I
with
was
you,
surprised that actually Sean Ryan talked to Greer like he didn't really grill him much. But these were earlier on in Sean's podcasting.
yeah, and Sean doesn't really grill people. You know, he kind of sits back and he does a lot of right, right, wow. You know, and I mean that's how he responds to a lot of things. Sean does. So Sean doesn't really, other than I think he gave Dr. Greer a Glock or something. He gave him a pistol.
He'll get his points in. The best Sean Ryan clip that I've seen is when he gives. Oh my God, what is that Tennessee congressman's name again?
Burchett.
Tim Burchett. Yeah,
Yeah.
he gives him like the hallucinogenics, and it's so awkward because I don't think those are legal in Tennessee. He's like, "Oh, thank you very very much. I really appreciate these."
Yeah, yeah. And I mean that's one of the things about him is that I don't think he really grills people a lot, and that's why I like on Jesse's. Jesse will get in there a little bit if he's allowed. Now Greer wouldn't allow Jesse in much, and that's going to be the issue with trying to talk to. If you watch Greer's podcast on YouTube when they post them, they're doing about one a week or every other week, and it's usually about an hour and a half long. The guy that's moderating that does not talk. He sits there quietly and lets Greer go for an hour, and that is the agreement. So Greer is not in environments where there's a lot of back and forth. Um, he doesn't. That's not his thing. So he knows that Jesse's smart. He acknowledges it in the episode. He's like, "Yeah, you're a smart guy." He knows Jesse's pretty witty. And it's almost like watching boxing or something. It's like he won't let him in. He won't let him really redirect him much. And I mean,
He
Jesse,
acknowledges that Jesse's smart at one point, even because he
Mhm.
kind of oversteps him a little bit, and then Jesse says something. He's like, "But yeah, you are smart," and it's
Yeah.
kind of like they made sure to edit that in with him like saying that to Jesse, and Jesse kind of acknowledging it. So that
But
was interesting.
one thing I was really surprised about is, so he asked him about some figures in the community today. And I'm really glad Jesse did this. And he started kind of going through a list, and Greer insults him and says the Eleanor Roosevelt, I think it is, the quote about we don't talk, something along the lines of stupid people talk about people or ask about people, and smart people talk about, real issues. Um, but anyways, he asks him about Chris Bledsoe, and we talk a lot about him, or at least I do, because it's North Carolina. North Carolina, again, I'm going to give us a shout out one more time. We're like a hotbed for ufology right now. We got Greer, who came from North Carolina. Jake Barber was stationed out at Pope Airfield here in North Carolina. Chris Bledsoe's in North Carolina. Diana Pasulka, who is a uh, religious professor at UNCW, wrote American Cosmic and Encounters, deals a lot with Dr. Nolan and Jacques Vallée. She's in North Carolina. DC Long is one of the stories that he ran into a floating object while he was on one of the bases, I think out near Pope Airfield. He's from North Carolina. A lot of North Carolina stuff going on, but he did ask him about Chris Bledsoe, and he said he knew of him, but he said Chris Bledsoe was intercepted by Jim Semivan. So I thought that was interesting, and we all know that they're attached. I mean, because that's those two have been very open about having a relationship, friendship. Like Chris has been open about that, and so is Jim. Jim, they've both said things about, oh yeah, I've talked to Jim, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I may get this wrong. I think something was going on with someone in Jim's life. I'm almost wanting to say his wife or someone close to Jim, and Chris claims to have these healing abilities, and if I'm not mistaken, that's where he brought Chris up there to see somebody. I could have that wrong. It could be somebody else that he was going to heal, but something was going on to where they would be visiting each other. Um, and apparently, Greer is claiming that's the intercept. So these interactions where someone comes to Chris and says, "Hey, we see you can do some pretty cool shit. We'd like to hang out with you and understand the phenomena better." He claims that that's an intercept, that is someone coming in to um, redirect Chris on what he's doing or what he's seeing. Um, so he did know of Chris. Now, he would not validate any of Chris's claims because Jesse tried to get there and he tried to say, well, do you think he's really seeing what he's seeing? And Greer's like, I don't know. Interesting, too, he did ask him about Tim Taylor. Now, I know I've mentioned that name to you before, too, and you're like, no, not Tim the Toolman Taylor. But this guy is referenced as a pseudonym in Diana Pasulka's book. It was either American Cosmic or Encounters. I can't remember which one. But she calls him Tyler D, but it comes out later that he's Tim Taylor, and this is this NASA hotshot who's been a NASA controller or something like that for decades. And he's the one that takes her and Dr. Nolan out to a crash site and allows Dr. Nolan to take some pieces back from a crash site somewhere out, presumably in New Mexico. And so he's kind of been he is the Moby Dick of the ufology world right now. Every Jesse Michaels, all these podcasters out there, with the big productions, they're all drooling to get their hands on Tim Taylor and bring him in because he's the one that everybody wants to talk to. He's the one that, in her book, she was going to bring him to the Vatican archives with her, and she has access because of her work, and they know her, and she's Catholic, and he's not Catholic, but he gets there ahead of her when they're traveling out to the Vatican, and she said, just let them know who you are. Maybe they'll let you in. And they gave him full access to the Vatican archives, all because of whatever credentials he showed them.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that story.
Yeah. So this guy's big. I mean, this guy is really big in the community right now. He's been pictured with Chris a lot. He's been popping up in these areas, and Greer said he didn't know him, hadn't even heard of him. So I was really surprised to hear that, because like that's one of the big names. It seems like when something big is going on, this guy pops up. And you know, Chris claims that he was brought into NASA to work with them on astronauts seeing orbs, and that's what Tim Taylor told him, is that you're here because you're seeing these orbs, and so are the astronauts, and we're trying to get to know the phenomena. Now, when that happens, according to Greer, they are being intercepted by the government. They're being redirected, and that way the government can control these people. But yeah, I mean, there's some very controversial things like the Eric Davis one. Because Eric Davis, I'm pretty sure he was one of the ones that was working on like the OSAP project. People hear that one a lot. ATIP, you may hear it called as well. That was what Lou was on there for a while. It was the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, something like that. And he said Eric Davis was an asset. Jacques Vallée was an asset there for a while. But he said he's apparently left those ways, and now he's back to being normal. So, I mean, he was all over the place. What it sounds like to me is someone who has, and this is just my opinion, someone who has been scorned, and he's been left out, and he doesn't like it. He does not like that To the Stars launched, and they left him out. And we've had years where these people would put out content. So Jesse I at least started calling Greer Voldemort, because they would not say his name. Jesse would be podcasted. Jeremy Corbell is probably the biggest name in podcasting documentaries and things like that right now in ufology. He's all over the
I
main
feel
news.
like he's dropped recently since he made that claim about the false flag operation, where he was saying that the government's going to say that something's coming in a few years, that there's supposed to be some mothership coming. I feel like ever since he said that,
Well,
he
you
hasn't
notice.
been buzzing as much.
Well, you notice this week when Skywatcher came out with their new episode a day after he released his Tic Tac video, the new Tic Tac video that came.
Yeah, yeah, and I
So that
did
was
watch
no.
that. It's like we need something better than just another Tic Tac. I know it's still good, but to me, it's like, oh, this is just like the other thing.
Yeah,
And I'm looking at it. I know if you're a real ufology guy, it's going to be a big thing. But to like someone like me,
it
it's
was
just like,
okay.
okay,
Yeah, I
another.
mean, it was kind of the same shape as what they show in the 2017 Tic Tac video, but it wasn't anything too special. But these people would Voldemort Greer, essentially. They would not talk about the guy. So now you've had TTSA come out. They're launching all kinds of stuff. Then to throw salt in the wound, you got all these new documentarians and all these new podcasters and all these new content creators, and they won't even say your name. And he's out here bringing whistleblowers forward. He's holding a new press club event where he brings Michael Herrera forward, and now everybody's validating him. He shows up briefly on George Knapp's Netflix series, Investigation Alien, I think is the name of it.
Is there going to be a season 2 of that? By the way, have you heard anything?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure there will be, and I think he's alluded something to that. But I'm sure. I think George is going to keep doing it as long as he can.
I'll just bring up one thing that some fans have been talking about: how much Greer looks like an alien. If you would think about this is a picture of him from Jesse Michaels, a screenshot. If you could think about someone that might look like a hybrid, in all honesty, like he does look kind of like a hybrid.
I mean, he just had his appendix out apparently
Yeah.
just before the podcast. So I don't know. Maybe he
Yeah.
was looking a little glum.
What's interesting though, I don't know if you picked this up. It seemed like he was trying to mention that a couple times, and then Jesse kept trying to downplay it. Did you pick that up? Right? I
Yeah.
I kind of felt like that he was trying to downplay that Greer just got his appendix out, but who knows? Somebody's asking. I did interview Carrie Cassidy years ago. Do you remember when Carrie Cassidy and Bill Ryan of Project Camelot debated Stephen Greer back in 2009? That's before my interest in this subject.
I do not. I'll have to go look that up. I don't. The only ones that stick out to me when it comes to debate is the epic one where you watch Corbell and I am not remembering the name of the guy. He has passed on now. But they were debating on one of the stage at one of these conferences about um, Lazar and validating Lazar because that's supposed to be a big movie coming out this year. Um, I think it's going to be called S4, and they're going to be going through, I think, more in depth what happened with the S4 situation with Lazar. Like, what did the base look like? What did it look like working there? It looks like they have a lot more visual to it, which a lot of us have been asking for. Uh, you know, don't softball this guy. He says he worked in an alien or in a hangar system where they had like 8 or 9 hangars, and each of those hangars had an alien craft in it. And walk through a day in the life of this guy. I'm hoping that's what S4 is going to be. Stanton Friedman, the name just came to me. Stanton Friedman and Corbell debated that. Now that was a big debate that I remember. I don't remember the one with Greer because I didn't know that. So whoever brought that up, thank you for doing that. Stanton Friedman, actually, there. Sopranos brought it up. But yeah, he normally does not position himself for debates, and he says he will debate Lou. Um, but it's funny. He's sitting there and he's saying he's fine. His appendix is fine. And Jesse said, "Well, Lou's in town. We can set it up." And Greer goes, "Yeah, I've got another thing I got to get to, and I'm injured."
Lou has turned that down though. I have heard Lou been asked that, and he
Yeah.
said something along the lines, "I'm not going to validate him." But I mean, for the sake of elevating ufology, I think that would be like as big of a thing as you could get as far as mainstream interest in
Oh,
ufology.
that would blow the top because those are that's the whole dichotomy right there, right? That's the whole thing. You have over here the government guy, he was inside. I think he still maintains a clearance. I don't know. I'm talking about Lou. And, you
As
know,
of the last interview where he was asked that I've seen, which was recently, yes.
yeah, completely contrasting, right? Though that side, and he says that we don't know what these things are. Greer hits him on that all the time. Greer hits him constantly about why is Lou sitting out here lying, saying we don't know what these things are? We do know what these things are. So, Lou's over here saying we don't know what it is. They could be a threat. So that's another thing that Greer hates is that he says they're a threat because as somebody's already brought up in the comments, Greer believes they're benevolent. We've heard the malevolent part of it from Lou talking about even demons at some point. Like people may not want to hear this kind of stuff. I've even heard George Knapp refer to that. Like maybe people don't want disclosure. If they knew what it was, they'd never get a night's sleep again.
Burchett mentions demons quite a bit too, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's on the religious side. Not that I'm not, but he's a little bit more religious than Elizondo, I think.
But that's why I say this is the closest we could get this interview was because at least Jesse would push back a little bit if he could to be like, I think Jesse was trying to come with him the argument that he can read character pretty well. And that was Jesse's argument is like, yeah, that guy seems like such a good guy. And I usually have a pretty good radar for picking up people's character and stuff like that. So he tried to take up for him, when they're throwing some of the people under the bus. With Fravor, he did not he still kind of said Fravor was a good guy. He's like, Fravor's an awesome person, good guy. And he's admitted that the Tic Tac is Lockheed. Now, I will keep hunting for that frantically because, like, if that is true, and I hate to keep coming back, but that is the biggest thing. That is what blew this whole thing wide open, is because everything before Fravor was all just, you know, trailer park rednecks, which, you know, not knocking them, but that's the best thing I can think of here where I live in North Carolina, is one of us trailer park rednecks walking out back. We've had too many beers and we see an object in the sky. No one's going to believe us. They don't believe that story, right? Fravor comes forward. He's an F-18 pilot. He's a Top Gun instructor, if I'm not mistaken, Top Gun pilot. And, you know, that massive story, right? So, and it made all the major news networks, and that moved society as a whole into ufology. It moved everybody in, whether you liked it or not. It was now part of the dialogue of a nation, of the world. And if that comes out, if that is found somewhere, because I'm pretty sure I just saw Fravor on the stage with everyone at the showing of Age of Disclosure. That's the new documentary that's
Yeah,
supposed.
he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So he's, to me, it seems like he's still maintaining, like, when I saw him there, and then I heard Greer in his podcast saying that, oh no, Fravor has admitted that that was nothing alien. He now knows it's man made. I'm like, if he did, I really doubt Fravor would be like, yeah, keep putting me up there on full blast, telling my story about running into this thing. And all the while, I know that it was just a military operation. That does not align with me. I don't see why Fravor would still be putting himself out there, putting himself in documentaries, putting himself up on stage, selling this story, and knowing that he's then also come out and said, oh, well, that was totally explainable, because that would kill the whole story. It would be done. Like, it would just be over at that point. And so we'll keep scratching for that. And then obviously it was new information for me to do. I always knew this stuff about maybe Jim and Hal, and some of them maybe kind of running government programs and still being kind of nefarious. But the Jacques Vallée one kind of threw me off, because, like, when he said Jacques was even, he says he knows what Jacques was offered and what got Jacques to turn, but he won't talk about who offered him what and how and what was offered and everything. But that Jacques Vallée obviously turned back around. That kind of threw me for a loop too, because I have read some of Jacques' books, but even we've talked about it on this channel, some of Jacques' stuff coming out and being a little wishy-washy. You know, Jacques did come out with a story about Trinity, and he did a book on it, and I read the book on it. And it was apparently a crash before Roswell. And it was an egg-shaped UFO, if I'm not mistaken. But when they tried to flush that out, apparently there were some issues with the story, and then there were some issues with the witnesses and their stories not aligning, and then they started doing some weird things and started trying to sell things and stuff like that. So it seemed like it started falling apart, but then he still talks about that landing or that crash as like a real event. So I don't know. I mean, some of these folks do some things that kind of hurt their credibility a little bit every now and then, but Jacques Vallée has usually been a pretty steady character in the field of ufology, you know, from all of his early work and everything. But to hear him even say that, I mean, you could see it really takes Jesse back, because I don't think he was expecting. I think he knew he would go after the TTSA crowd, which is Hal, Jim, Lou. He knew that. He knew Greer was going to punch him. But some of these others, you could tell it really bothered Jesse. You know, the Eric Davis one. So
Lou's fully separated from To the Stars Academy, though, now, isn't he? Because they don't really.
I don't think they do much anymore, to be honest. I know
No, they
that.
haven't put out much.
Yeah, I know that Tom DeLonge, you know, still occasionally was doing some podcasting with Jim Semivan. And if you want to talk, if This is where I will take up for Greer a little bit when people say, well, Greer is so out there. He's so la la land and everything else. You don't want to go listen to a Tom DeLonge, Jim Semivan talk then. Because if you go listen, Google it right now. I cannot remember the name of the podcast, but if you Google Tom DeLonge, Jim Semivan podcast or something like that, it's probably going to pop up because they've done more than one.
Yeah, I
And they
mean,
get
Tom
pretty,
DeLonge's way overdue to talk about UFOs again because I don't think he's done anything more than a couple minutes for years now, to be
yeah,
honest. Because I'm a big follower of his. Jim Semivan, his more recent one might be from engaging the phenomenon, unless TTSA has put out some new stuff. But I don't think they had a podcast for a while, but I think they
yeah,
slowed down on it, which is incredible because they could be the leaders right now, but they kind
yeah.
of let themselves slip.
Yeah, and I looked it up. I think it's just called TTS Talks. So I think that's the name of it.
Yeah, they used
Um,
to have a podcast which may still be active, but if it is, they're not doing much.
oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, this one right here, the first one that popped up was number 12, and it says it's from a year ago. So yeah, it's probably older stuff. But if you think that Greer has a monopoly on crazy or wild talk, you haven't listened to these guys because they're talking about interdimensional stuff too. There is a lot that Greer says that they say, so there is a lot there. Talking about even the mechanics of what's going on with these craft and the interdimensional beings and things like that. There is a lot that's being said. The only difference is what is this? Do you think they're good or bad? Um,
Yeah, and let's just bring up this guy's point and Greer's assumption that they're benevolent makes sense. Otherwise, why are we here? Unless we take Lou's point of view and they could be doing reconnaissance on us, or we could be their experiment, or a number of other things. But there is a number of other reasons why we could still be here. But yes, that does make the most sense.
yeah, and that's what he says that point several times. Greer does in the interview yesterday that came out. He says that if they wanted to wipe us off the face of the earth, they would have already done it, and they would have done it decades ago. Um, that's fine, but I think Lou still gets into this and I think this is what gets under his skin, and even some of us in ufology, because we think that they do know that the government does know some of what these are, especially when you have people like David Grush coming forward and saying that we do have retrievals. And now you have Jake Barber coming forward and saying we do have retrievals. But Lou gets under the skin of and kind of gaslights some people by saying we don't know. We don't know what they are. We have no clue. We don't know what we're dealing with, that kind of thing. And I think that sets some people on edge, not just Greer. It sets a lot of people on edge because we're hearing two opposite stories here, and it's just we're trying to understand and we're trying to figure out how this world fits together. Because let me pull one more string. I know we're coming toward the end here, but one more string here is that Jake started the Skywatcher stuff. We did the review on that yesterday or day before yesterday of that episode 2. So Jake is over here with Skywatcher. Well, guess who is helping out with that effort? And I don't know if he's helping with funding or fund crowdsourcing it or what, but Dr. Nolan. So Dr. Nolan had his run in and his beef with Dr. Greer because Dr. Greer had him on one of his documentaries with the little alien body, and pretty much Dr. Nolan is a Stanford doctor, came forward and said, yeah, I mean, it's weird, but it seemed to line up with like a small child or something, or maybe a miscarriage or something like that, the small body that Greer had found. Well, Greer's tried to come out and say that no, Nolan's a CIA asset or something like that, and then they flipped him. So those two don't get along, but here you got Barber stuck in the middle. So Barber's on Skywatcher hanging out with Nolan, but Barber's over here hanging out and taking up for Greer. So you see what I'm saying? It's like it's very hard for the community sometimes to wrap their head around like how these guys connect because they hate each other. They cannot stand each other, but then
And
you'll
the
have
funny
some.
thing is, a lot of the media doesn't even realize that there's a political side to ufology, and they'll
Oh
have
yeah,
some of these guys on together, expecting them to all push the same narrative.
yeah, and it's not even in the same ballpark because they have completely different ways of how they look at it. And then this with contact. Uh, that's one of the final points we need to make is that so Greer wants to have the top say on the trajectory of the community, right? He wants to be bringing these whistleblowers forward. If a whistleblower comes forward, he wants to be the guy who's bringing them, right? He doesn't want someone else's face. It's almost like promoting a fighter, right? And you're walking up on the ring, and this guy's the next new fighter. You want to be his promoter. You want to be his Don King. You're right behind him, and some new fighter's coming up, and you want to be the guy right behind him. Greer wants to be there. He wants to be the promoter, the guy that's like, hey, I'm right here. This is my guy. When Dave Grush came out, when his story was getting ready to be released, you know what Greer did? He ran out really quick and put a statement up right before the video went out. And Greer was like, I know this guy. This guy came to me first. He talked to me first. And I just want it known that I know Grush. And, and it was just like, why do that? Like, I mean, so Grush decided to go through
Very
Corbell.
childish for a
Yeah.
surgeon, alleged surgeon. Is there pictures of him performing surgeries, or is there anyone collaborating his background?
No, but I'm pretty sure that's legit. I don't think he's yeah,
It's
but
as legit as the 400-pound bench press.
oh, he said he could. Did you hear him tell Jesse he could squat like 800 or something?
No, I
Yeah,
must have tuned out by that part. Wow. Now I want to see this. Please put up the video because I said
he's 70. So
exactly. So you know what? Some people I challenged him on this 400 because everyone posts workout videos. I'm like, please post to show us because that'll go viral. Because
oh
he
god,
always talks about it all the time. So now, and people stuck up, hey, Hannibal, no wonder he's not going to do this. He's talking about his younger days. So now you're saying he's on the record, say he could squat 800 pounds. So,
it
so
was
please put this up. I beg you.
yeah. And Jesse's even like you can see Jesse when he tells him that, and he's like, "What really?" And he's like, "Wow, that's amazing." He's like, "Yeah, I work out, I stay active, and all this other stuff." And I
Another
mean,
proof that he's a hybrid, if that's true.
yeah, there you go. Maybe he is. If he is 70 years of age and he's squatting 800 pounds, and
So
but
so I guess if he fully doesn't believe in the abduction program, what does he think that I guess if it's the government black programs, what does he think that they're extracting sexual fluid from for? I wonder if it's not
I
aliens
don't
doing
think
it.
they ever get that deep with him. I
Yeah,
think they just stay at surface level and they just ask him. So you're saying like the Betty and Barney Hill thing? Are you saying that that's not real? Are you saying that Whitley
yeah.
Strieber?
He definitely. I saw him say that Betty and Barney Hill was not real. Yeah,
You
that was
know,
specifically mentioned.
yeah, and he's like, oh, well, I know the people that worked on these programs, and I know the people that did um, the reenact or the acting it out or whatever. Or that was part of the program to go do this. And he's like, yeah, they're regretful now. They wish they wouldn't have done it. They hated they were part of those programs. But he's like, when they're in their 20s, they're being told to, hey, you gotta dress up like this thing and go fly a helicopter out and go mutilate this cow, and that's your mission. And we've heard Richard Doty, talk about that, and he's been in some of Greer documentaries talking about, yeah, that was part of our thing to throw people off. If people got to sniffing around too close, we'd freak them out. If you live too close to one of these bases and you're looking over there and you're constantly trying to snoop on them, but there's some cattle that live in a field there nearby. Let's kill all those cattle in an awful way, and then maybe people will quit sniffing around. Like that's Greer's claim, is that that's what's going on. Is that they're they're intentionally messing with people so that you don't poke, you don't pry. How do we get people to not come sniffing around? How do we get people to be afraid of this and to fear it? And that gets back into Greer's angle, is he believes that Lou, Hal, uh, Eric Davis, Jim Semivan, all these people are part of a, you should fear them. You trust me, you don't want nothing to do with them. Um, and like I said, I've even heard people outside of government talk about that kind of stuff. And it's funny, that's where Corbell will push back on George Knapp when they're on their Weaponized podcast, because I've heard George Knapp say it several times. I don't know, Jeremy. I don't know if we want disclosure. I don't know if people want to know this stuff because they can't handle it. And Jeremy gets all mad at him. He's like, no, they should know they should know all the information. But yeah, I think that these are some of the things we'll pull on. We'll kind of keep watching it as we follow up. Can we figure out? That is the new thing to find out. If somebody can find that information about Fravor saying that the Tic Tac was Lockheed Skunk Works, that will be the massive news of the year, in my opinion, because that completely throws out where so many people entered this. A lot of people who are new to ufology joined because of that video, and it got them interested. And he was the first credible. I mean, I know there was a Phoenix Light situation, but that's still out there that could have been flares, right?
Yeah, and let's bring this up while we're talking about Greer, because Greer has recently said he caused the Phoenix Lights. That's one of his latest claims. Have you heard this?
Was he out there doing CE5 or something? Maybe I
Yeah,
didn't hear about
he
that.
says the
Okay.
CE5. And again, and I forgot about this until you brought this up. But yeah, I didn't believe it. A fan told me during one of my updates that Greer is now taking credit for the Phoenix Lights. And I mean, that's just taking it to another level.
Well, I mean, he took credit for the Admiral Wilson debacle as well. So, and he talks about that on Jesse's, and he claims all that. So, look, I, I just think like there was some things that happened before 2017 that were pretty big that got some news play, but they weren't convincing enough. I'm not throwing off on the Phoenix Lights. I wasn't there. I don't know what it was. If you ask my opinion, when you watch it, it does look like flares being dropped by a plane, because they kind of come up sequential in order, and they go out in order like flares would. They keep saying they saw a craft and they saw a craft move over them. But you see what I'm saying? There was debate about it. Like you had to kind of be there to see it.
And
This,
I remember you had to rent the VHS, like at
yeah.
least in Canada. It wasn't news worldwide or anything. You had to rent a VHS in '97 or whatever. I think it happened in '96, but I remember when I was in like grade 11 or 12 renting, hey, VHS about the Phoenix Light. That was the only way you could know about that type of thing.
And I have asked people who were more aware in the late 80s and early 90s of the Lazar story when that came out with KLAS, with George Knapp in Las Vegas. That did not get any major play either, because I've asked people, look, in the late 80s, I was born in 82. So in the late 80s, I was only pushing like 8 years old, 7, 8 years old. I was not paying attention, I promise you, to anything in ufology then. I've asked some people who were older then, and I'm like, did you ever hear about this story with Bob Lazar and everything? And to this day, they don't even know who Bob Lazar is. They're like, no, and I definitely didn't hear anything about it back then. So yes, there were things before 2017, but nothing made major news, constant airplay. I mean, when Fravor came out, he was on he wasn't right away. He eventually started showing up on the channels, but Lou was out there promoting that Tic Tac video on every major news network. And that's why I'm saying that will be the biggest thing this year, is if that comes out, that we have proof that Fravor is admitting, yes, I now know that it's Lockheed Skunk Works. That will be huge.
Very interesting. Well, this was quite a breakdown, and I may have to at least maybe listen to this again while I'm falling asleep this week.
Yeah, it's a
To
lot.
like,
3.5 hours is,
yeah. As I said, the first hour and a half is pretty good, and then I mean, I'm not saying the other half is, but there's only so much you can take of Greer before your brain starts
Yeah.
tuning out. But this, I would definitely recommend this over any of his movies because there's a devil's advocate here, and he usually just takes over an interview and just gets his
Everything
point
that's in
across.
his movies is in this interview. Yes.
Exactly.
So it
But
is
he's
all
questioned on it a bit.
it's all compacted into this. Yeah.
So there you go. Well, I'll let you close this off, Casey. Thank you guys. And we're going to be doing more UAP podcasts, at least one a week or so. And Casey's going to be following the UAP news. Plus, I have other UAP interviews that I'll be doing along with my wrestling interviews. And I appreciate Casey jumping on board here to help us because I know some of you guys are only interested in the UFO content. So when I get distracted with other stuff, we'll at least stay on top of the news to some extent. So thanks for listening to this. Mike says you look like Matt Stryker from WWE, if you ever heard of him.
I haven't.
Sort of. He was a teacher at one point, so another smart guy. So thanks, guys, for tuning in, and I'll let Casey close this off.
Yeah, and I'm happy to help. I mean, as long as Super Crazy don't take you down in May, right? Isn't that the plan?
Yeah, there's no way that's gonna happen. There's no way that's gonna happen. And I'll be back in Vegas next week for the WrestleMania festivities. So if anyone is from Vegas and has any UFO contacts, I will be in that area. I did go to Area 51 a few months ago while I was
I'm
there.
jealous.
That was a lot of fun.
I would love to go out there. One of the guys that I watch that does a lot of bourbon hunting was out at Tonopah, and Tonopah, is the one of the other test sites. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, we'll keep posting, just like we did the Skywatcher update this week and recap for people. If you haven't watched that, go watch that here on the Hannibal TV. We did the Skywatcher episode 2 recap, and then as these things, because there's content every week, and we'll keep posting about those. So yeah, thanks, Hannibal.